Live. Hey there. Welcome to Boost Government with Automation. I'm your host, Lance Adams. Welcome today. We got a pretty exciting show today. We're going to talk about some more automation and what some of our customers are up to. If you've been tuning in every other Tuesday, you know we've talked about some different things as it pertains to automation, things like robotic process automation, what agencies are doing, AI, all kinds of things. So today we've got a pretty exciting session. With me today from a company called ActiveWorks is George Thomas. And George is Vice President of Sales over at ActiveWorks. He's been in the financial industry and financial application space for a long time. Welcome, George.
Thank you very much, Lance. Good to be here.
All right. So before we get started, maybe you can tell us a little bit about ActiveWorks and what you guys do.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been in the business of business process automation for quite some time as a company. And our evolution is really in streamlining operations, finding ways to automate steps that are manual in process. And the history goes back to the FileNet days and DataCap days when they were its own company, believe it or not. And we have a lot of organizations that we have provided this type of services. And more recently, around 8 years ago or so, we focused on the financial automation space because we found it as a very important, repeatable solution that's really cross-industry. So our goal, our vision, continues now to become the leaders in financial transaction automation and digital transformation for Fortune 5,000 companies. So that's the space we play in, and looking forward to this conversation to share more on.
Great. Yeah. So, we you mentioned about 8 years ago, you switched over. So a lot of customers we talk to, a lot of agencies, they're looking at different areas where they can apply some of these new automation technologies. And it seems like accounts payable, invoicing, that comes up quite a bit. So today's title, The Joy of Invoice Processing, we thought we'd chat about this some. So a lot of these agencies, right? So you think, okay, well, everybody has to pay bills. Everybody's got invoices to process, things like that. A lot of these agencies have these big ERP systems or some big behemoth system. Is that the kind of stuff we're talking about here?
Yeah, let me tell you, every agency that you walk into, and both in the private as well as in the public sector, you will find every single one of them have an ERP system, like you said. So the question is, what are we doing in that space? What we find typically is we try to automate processes from the time the supplier sends an invoice or any supporting document to any of their distributed locations to when all the way to payments. It's an entire life cycle. So even though they have an ERP system, believe it or not, there is a number of manual steps that takes place even before somebody enters a transaction into an ERP system. For example, how does the information come in? Does it come in via paper, via fax, via email? And then once it comes in, some of the agencies are still printing out emails or taking the documents. They have to mail sort it. They have to distribute it to the right people because they may have specialists who handle certain types of documents, certain types of categories or products, maybe certain regions. And then they have to decide, did we receive the goods or services? They might have to check with a few people on that. Where do they apply these charges? So sometimes they write on the invoice or they may correspond via email. All these things are happening, and it has not even got into your ERP system yet. There may be duplicates. They want to check for frauds, so they don't want to pay fraudulent invoices. So there's some checks and processes that they have to do. There's about 10, 15 steps, and it has not even entered the ERP. So it tends to be about 10 to 15 touches. Every time somebody touches, it's expensive because there is a cost associated with every touch that takes place.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to ask. So, agencies aren't going to tear out their big ERP system and put in something brand new to do invoices. So you mentioned a lot of different areas like, I've talked to customers that actually have to go to websites to pull down invoices, things like that. So are there, you mentioned a lot of different steps. What kind of value do customers see from, say automating just, either scanning in or, processing these automatically instead of manually?
Yeah, let me give you some live examples. So before automation, a company who receives this type of information in its manual form and have to data enter everything in to the time when they actually get it into an ERP system for payments and all, the cycle time could take somewhere between 30 to 45 days before it actually gets ready to pay. It's because it might be sitting in somebody's inbox, it might be sitting on somebody's desk. They have no visibilities to those liabilities. So the number one goal is to once you receive something, to reduce your cycle time. And after automation, we are able to get that down to like 5 days, ready to pay state. That doesn't mean you pay in 5 days. It is ready for payment in 5 days, and then you take advantage of the terms. Here's another metric, is that the cost of processing a single invoice, if it's manual, it could range somewhere between $15 to $17 an invoice, which if you're an agency that's processing 30,000 invoices a month, 50,000 a month, it tends to be pretty expensive. After automation, it could be down to $2. So think about it, from 15 down to 2 per transaction. The other question is, for every supplier, you are negotiating discount terms and based upon term payments. So you've got a 30-day or a 45-day or a 60-day term, and you have certain negotiated discounts. If your cycle time is long and you have no visibility to those transactions, sometimes you miss your discount structures, and you might have to pay regular price to your suppliers because you didn't process it within the time frame. It could range from 18%, where you're gaining discounts, to 75% after automation of gaining some of those discounts. These are some very critical metrics that we bring to the table.
Yeah, that's great. And then so within an agency, right? So who cares about this stuff, right? Is it I mean, I imagine the top money guy, it makes a difference to him, right?
Yeah, absolutely, because cash is king, even
Right.
process. And so they are trying to do two things. One is to make sure they're in compliance in all their process, that make sure that they're gaining all their discounts, and their predictability from their spend perspective is critical. It also, we provide complete analytics on the entire process. For example, one of the ones I really like is you get a heat map of all the suppliers, and the larger the squares, the more you're spending with them. So they get a complete real-time visibility of every single transaction, but most importantly, payments they're making to their suppliers, which informs them, as especially the executives, the financial folks who run these operations, that they have opportunities to work and strike better deals with their suppliers.
Right. So
From a financial perspective, that is pretty important. And so far, by the way, we have just spoken about the payable side, the invoice processing side, because once it goes into the ERP, we work in collaboration with the ERP. We're not ripping the ERP out or anything like that.
right.
ERP continues to be the source system. But what happens once it goes through the ERP? Now you have to make the payments to your suppliers.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we have done is we streamline and automate the payment side. For example, we all are coming out slowly. We were talking earlier about COVID, and we are slowly coming out of the whole COVID issues. If you are still making payments to your suppliers via check, that was a major issue because people had to come into the office, stuff the checks, make the payment runs, mail it, and the cost of mailing is 35 cents
Sure.
for every payment that goes out. We have now in our payment supplier network close to 500,000 suppliers who are receiving electronic payments. And one of the things we try to do is to move them to electronic payments and payment optimization strategies, which reduces their cost of payments and then help them in that process as well. And then we provide rebates back to the agencies as a way of currently making payments for moving them to an electronic mode of payment.
Sure. Huh. So, I mean, I'm sitting here thinking all the invoices that an agency must have, just from all their different, some agencies have lots of real estate and just, all the goods and services. And so I would imagine, making one small change, just automating one small piece could have, huge impact in savings.
Let me give you an example that I hear all the time. Our vendor master is a mess. It's got duplicates and name changes. And how do I clean that out? Is there an easy way to do that? One of the things we offer is vendor onboarding process. So when I want to deal with a new supplier, how do you bring them on board? So we have a mechanism where we can that we can register new suppliers, but more importantly, we do background checks on them. So for example, on behalf of the agency, so can the government do business with them? Are they on any of the blacklists they should be aware of? We check with the USPS for the correct address of their company. We do a TIN check for tax identification to verify that they are indeed valid suppliers. If it passes all of that, we check for duplicates against the vendor master. Do they exist? Now we are starting to put clean records that's going to come into the vendor master as a way of onboarding. Along with that, we can have additional types of documents that's important for suppliers like W-9s or W-2s or whatever else, change of address forms, those kinds of things are all included as part of the process. Just an example of a very important laborious process, and we are providing that as a function for them.
Sure. So, yeah, that's I see a lot of processes. Our last session was on process mining.
Oh yeah,
so I can see where you're going through doing all these different processes that just for a single invoice that being able to make sure that you got that stuff down right would make a huge difference. And I know we've talked to some customers about using robotic process automation to do things like some of the mundane. You talked about doing background checks, things like that, just kicking off some of those processes.
Absolutely, and you had mentioned RPA with regards to as a one way of checking websites, pulling down invoices, but then you take it through our intelligent process. We have what's called an active mailroom. Active mailroom is powered by IBM DataCap underneath the covers, and it's really phenomenal in what it does. And really, one of the things we are so excited about, we use what's called polymorphic technology as part of the capture process that allows you to move the straight-through process close to 100% for all types of documents, and especially the invoices that we have fine-tuned it. And it's a great way to bring items in. So whether you're using our portal, where vendors are submitting invoices through the portal, or using an RPA tool to grab invoices from websites, or coming in the traditional, copy, fax, emails, Excel spreadsheets. We have EDI streams coming through our mailroom application as well. So it's quite powerful because companies want consistent, controlled process and validations for all transactions, regardless of how it comes in.
Right.
So that's key.
I imagine with agencies, you've got suppliers of all different types of goods, services, and nobody, so nothing is one standard way of getting your invoices. So things, I would imagine, they come in a lot of different ways. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and then who touches it? When do they touch it? Do they have authority to touch it? Do they have authority to approve it? All those controls are in there, and it's completely has an audit history as to when it came in, when it left, escalations. And as part of our COTS application, we provide best practice workflows to our clients. as a starting point. So instead of starting at day 0, you're starting basically at day 100, where we are showing functionality of a real COTS application from start to finish, and we are just configuring the delta that's required. So our deployments are rather quick. Within a quarter, we can get a system up and running with an integrated ERP system.
Right. And you mentioned we're not ripping and replacing anything. So you're kind of going in. What is, in terms of how long does it take? I guess it would imagine it would be depending on what I want to do. But what are some of the typical places that you'll start with an organization to go in and say, okay, let's start here?
Yeah, so a great place to start is the ability to what I call digitize it if you're doing manual process. And so maybe a first level of automation is to take the electronic capture process, have maybe an approval for one type of document type that you may be interested in, and then establish the connectivity to the backend. Because our goal is to, again, reduce the cycle time, eliminate some of the manual steps, but becomes a great area for starters. And then you can add and build it from there. You can bring on the vendor portal. You can bring journal entering process. And let me tell you, journal entry is such a great advantage for clients. I mean, how many times have you talked to accountants and said, don't call me at the end of the month because
Right.
I'm closing the books
Yep.
or I'm making the payments. You hear this all the time. And what our solution does is at the end of the month, if there are transactions that's are really floating around for approvals, not have quite made it into the ERP yet, our system goes and grabs all of them that's outstanding for the processor, so they have an immediate view of all of the outstanding accruals, and they can immediately pay and close their books basically for the month. It simplifies it. I think it's a huge time saver for.
Yep.
And underneath the covers, Lance, it's your BAW tool that's doing this thing.
Sure.
Your tools. We use ODM for decision managers because there are certain steps where we use your components. So your Cloud Pak for automation is really what powers all of this.
Great. Yeah. It's, I mean, you think, oh, we get this big system to do accounts payable and everybody's all happy. Okay. But, as we talk to more customers and really start looking at this stuff, they're like, oh, these invoices, some have pictures and they're all different formats. And, I found it interesting that we can actually take and compare, the line items with the actual PO, do that database check and look up to make sure, I ordered 500. Am I getting billed for 5,000? Things like that. And I got to think that's a huge saver and, catching any errors like that and fraud. I know it's crazy times we're in right now. And so, to be able to keep a good eye on things and make sure, all your invoices are valid, that would be pretty important.
That's a really good point. And if you are manually matching invoices today, you've got to call me immediately.
Right.
because our system can do a lot of that matching from the invoice against your open PO record. But most importantly, we can also track what amount is left on your PO. So as your invoices come in, if it goes over, we'll notify somebody on that.
Wow.
And so it is critical in that process. One of the things that we are doing from an advanced AP automation perspective is we are doing what's called straight through processing, and if using AI. And one of the things is if it has seen those types of invoices have gone through, it will remember how it coded it, where did they apply the charges, and automatically apply it. Now you have the option whether you want to see it, but the system can say if it falls within a certain threshold, either dollar-wise or percentage-wise, let it through without any human intervention. If it falls outside within the thresholds and the system is saying, I need somebody to look at it, then intelligently we'll route it to the appropriate people to handle those kinds of things. So we are going to add chatbots into it as well to help processors to, what do I do in these kinds of situations? What did we do historically? Already within the system is you can see historically how I paid this particular supplier for the past 3 months, and we have that information readily available too.
Huh. Yeah, you mentioned heat maps and pie charts and things like that. So the the optics of this stuff is good. And we've been, over the last few weeks, months, we've been talking about automation and how within the government there's you don't get a real hard ROI from applying AI to something or automating processes. It's more about getting time back to the mission. But here, with by doing this, I see both. That person frees up their time because now they're not manually doing those invoices, and yet it can significantly affect the bottom line of that agency. And with budgets as tight as they are, that would be a big benefit, I would think.
Yeah, and at the same time, you're making sure your supply chain is not affected. Your suppliers are getting paid at the right time. One of the big things that we are bringing to the table as well is how do you apply? What if you pay the supplier, in 10 days as opposed to 45 days in their term? And they are okay. If you're $1 million spend supplier, they're okay maybe with taking a 2% discount there in addition to their negotiated terms. And it's pretty significant dollars back. But most importantly, all calls coming in. Did you get my invoice? What's the status on it? Your vendors call you all the time. We get to free up processors within the agency, because now through our communication application, vendors have 24/7 access to their invoices, where it is in the process, have you got paid, and we can even show them payment information. When did it go out for payments? If it's a check or an ACH or a wire, how it was paid, and that can be exposed to them as well.
Yeah, great. So it's very compelling, George. I think I would think a lot of agencies would be interested in at least taking another look at their whole AP process and checking it out. So how does an agency get started? Like if somebody said, George, what do I do? Help. What are some of the first few steps that they would do?
I typically like to say we will love to understand your process a little bit to tell you if automation makes sense. Sometimes agencies have invested in pockets of automation, and they may have a scanning piece, or they may have maybe RPA for certain function. But there's a lot of opportunity there. So one of the things, Lance, we are offering is a workshop which we provide to all our clients, which is part of the project anyways, and it's to identify where the opportunities are and collect some of your information and to come back to you and say, here are the places of opportunity. We've got a spreadsheet that we provide to our clients. With COVID, nobody's coming on site, so just a few hours of discussion with you, we'll be able to capture that, and we'll be sensitive of their times as we go along. But this is a free workshop only on this set.
Good deal.
That we are offering. So I would say just take advantage of it to see if you're a good agency and a candidate for it.
Yeah. I mean, it seems that organizations, I know IBM, we do a lot of these workshops with customers, because when you start talking about automation, it's not like I need a new lamp, I need a new sofa. I mean, you're really looking at existing technologies that you have and how can you best enhance them. And, we find working with, folks like you, George, that are experts at this. This is all you do. It's your bread and butter. That, it's good to get a second or third set of eyes on things.
Yeah.
So,
and it's a repeatable solution for us. We believe we have 90% of the functionality already built. So it's truly a COTS application. We hardly ever do custom work anymore. And if there's always some uniqueness. Don't get me wrong, but it's small because we bring so much functionality, and the product is so rich in all it can do. So
yeah, great. Good deal. Well, George, any final thoughts for our audience here watching today?
I just want to say we are going to be hosting a webinar second week in June, Lance. The date is yet to be finalized. So if anybody's interested, if there's a way to contact you or me, that way
Sure.
we'll be glad to share that date with you.
Good. Yeah, and we'll put it out here, and yeah, that's great. Well, George, this is, I think, as we talk through automation and different technologies, it's good to talk about an actual good use case, and I think around invoices, because it is like you mentioned, so helter skelter, and I think applying the right automation to the right point within these invoice processes can have a huge return for some of our customers. So absolutely, thanks for your time today. Thanks for joining us. It was quite insightful. If anybody wants to get in touch with us, you know how to do that. You've got my email address and everything, and we can put you in touch with George and ActiveWorks. They do great work out there with our customers. Again, appreciate your time, George. Our next session in 2 weeks, we've got an exciting session, and we'll be getting information about that out to you. And so in the meantime, certainly if anybody has any questions, you can reach out. If you're new and this is the first session that you're checking out, all of our previous sessions are available on demand that you can go back and rewatch them. Sometimes they're good just to rewatch because we've had some good information out there. So I guess we'll see everybody again in 2 weeks. And until then, keep automating.